Welcome to Newcastle Family History Society podcasts. The Newcastle Family History Society, located on Awabakal land in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia, provides support for those interested in family history. Finding historical records about children connected to your family can be an unexpected surprise, but this can then introduce you to social issues which you hadn't anticipated. After many years of using records to research the children admitted to the industrial schools and reformatories of New South Wales, Jane Ison has developed an in-depth understanding of how these records evolved and how they support each other. In this series of podcasts entitled, What Are You Looking At?, Jane will critically scrutinise the records pertaining to the boys admitted to the Vernon and the girls admitted to Newcastle, Biloela and Shaftesbury. The first podcast will focus on the main admission register for girls, New South Wales State Archives record NRS 14722. Using this record may be very rewarding for family historians who had children in these institutions, but the register does have its limitations.
In order to get the most out of any record, researchers need to understand the resource. It is important to recognise that when looking for information about just one person, it is not possible to reach that understanding. In this series of podcasts, I will take an in-depth look at some of the records connected to institutions in New South Wales. Where can the record be accessed? Why was the information collected? And I can guarantee that it was not collected to suit family historians. How does the record fit with other resources from the time period? Most importantly, I will look at the limitations of that record. The Register of Warrants received is also referred to as the Training School for Girls, Biloela, Parramatta Entrance Book, 1867 to 1924. It relates to the girls and, from 1871, young boys under the age of 8 who were arrested and admitted to the industrial schools at Newcastle, Biloela and Parramatta. This is a pivotal document reflecting government policy for children in the mid to late 1800s. It is just one of the documents relating to children admitted to the industrial schools from 1867. I have used this record extensively in my research and have communicated any problems and inconsistencies I found to state records. Their site now reflects much of what I uncovered. Throughout this podcast, this document will be referred to as the Register. The Register is a single thick volume and is stored at State Records at Kingswood. Due to privacy, it has only been partially filmed, and those images may be found on the paid website Ancestry and on the State Records microfilm reel number 3850. For information about names in the restricted part of the register or in later registers, researchers must contact State Records. The register contains names, ages and sometimes family details of children arrested and admitted firstly to Newcastle in 1867, then from May 1871 to Biloela, and finally from 1887 to Parramatta Industrial Schools. These names and details have been transcribed, and this secondary record forms part of the Child Welfare and Protection Index on the State Records website. The register doesn't contain the name of any girl admitted to the Newcastle Reformatory, the Biloela Reformatory, or the Shaftesbury Reformatory, but State Records identifies that there was only a reformatory in Newcastle and does not clarify that there was also an industrial school there. The register was used continuously between 1867 and 1924 by the successive superintendents of the industrial schools. It is in truly remarkable condition for a record used regularly for over 50 years. Until 1876, the register operated as both an entrance book and a discharge book for girls admitted between 1867 and 1875, and for young boys admitted from 1871 until 1875. The register shows no discharge record for some children. I will look further at the discharge register in a future podcast. Girls were arrested from across the state of New South Wales, although the majority of admissions came from Sydney and its environs. For each admission, the register recorded an admission number, a place of trial, an age, and almost always a given name and last name. An educational assessment was also recorded, and the first 94 girls had a more comprehensive assessment than later admissions. Frequently, the names of one or both parents were recorded, but on occasion, no parents were identified at all. Every girl received an admission number when she reached the school, roughly corresponding with her order of arrival. If girls were discharged and subsequently readmitted, they received a new admission number. For admission numbers 46 to 119, a second, mostly consecutive number was recorded. Their use was begun by Agnes King and continued under Clark's superintendency. These second numbers do not seem to link to location or age and are thought to be some form of classification, perhaps academic. This additional numbering ended at some time between 1869 and 1876, the period when the pages did not survive. The first limitation of the register is difficult to avoid. Transcribers should record what is actually written, and this has been done. However, an in-depth investigation of the inmates shows that mistakes, both intentional and unintentional, were made when the document was created. Analysis has found that, especially for early arrests, ages recorded are often wrong. Comparisons between the register, a court report, and a confirmed birth reference have been made where this has been possible. A number of reasons were identified that may explain these age errors, and they reflect the circumstances of each individual child. Girls may not have known their actual age. Some parents or carers deliberately stated that a girl was older than her recorded age to facilitate an early release from the school and proving an illegal arrest. Some girls, particularly those from lower socioeconomic families, may have understated their age to try to avoid being jailed for prostitution, not realising that an admission to the industrial school would result in a 12-month confinement away from home. Parents then had to prove their daughter's correct age. It eventually became known that lying about a child's age in court often ensured an admission to Newcastle and later Biloela, so parents deliberately lied in order to remove their child from a deprived circumstance, a situation of danger, or possibly their own apathy. Parents may have deliberately lied to an earlier institution, and this error was then perpetuated when the girl was sent to another institution. Girls may have told deliberate lies to enable them to be discharged sooner, and this was especially true in cases of older inmates who could be considered streetwise. It was difficult for the authorities to prove a girl's age at this time. Many ages were recorded in pencil. When additional documents referring to girls with penciled ages are read, it becomes clear that the superintendent doubted the veracity of the information he had been given by them. It would seem that transcribers have apparently ignored any writing in pencil, and this is a second limitation of the register. Penciled notations were significant. It is not possible to distinguish between ink and pencil notations in any copy of the register. Only in the original register can a comparison be made. At least 3 girls were admitted under assumed names or aliases, and a discussion of why these aliases were used may be found on my website. There was never an admission named Margaret White. This girl was actually named Sarah Auburn, and her name appears on no index at all. Her correct name, written in pencil, was ignored by all transcribers. A third limitation occurred because of the spelling attributed to some surnames. Most girls had been born in Australia, but there were a small number of admissions who had been born overseas, bringing with them the accents from their original country. While every girl had one or both parents who were of European heritage, there were some girls with a parent from more unusual locations who probably used heavily accented English or did not speak English at all. 2 girls of Aboriginal heritage have been identified. This multicultural community helped contribute to a variety of surname spellings, and sometimes it is very difficult to locate the appropriate family. A further problem arises with the frequent lack of family information recorded in the register. It does not seem to have been the intention of the government to identify a child's family. If a parent was deceased, they were identified in the record as dead. Notations indicating both parents dead, mother absconded, father in jail, mother dead are common. Contemporary statistics about the boys aboard the Vernon, published in the newspapers, suggested that the government was collecting information about the situation in which the children arrested under the Act lived. Additionally, there have been further limitations found regarding the accuracy of parent names, as on occasion contemporary sources have shown that the wrong information was written in the register. The information provided probably came directly from the individual girl. Whether errors were deliberate or unintentional depended on the girl. Mary Kinnaird probably knowingly lied about her father's given name, but it is believed that Mary Allen gave the wrong name as her father had been gone for a long time and she was very young. The condition of the register is truly remarkable for a book used for more than half a century. After careful inspection of the original document, it becomes apparent that at some time in the past, the register was rebound, and during this process, approximately 40 pages were not included. It is believed that these pages did not survive and were missing well before the rebinding occurred. This presents 3 major limitations of the document. A notation indicating when the inmates were transferred to Parramatta appears in the register. However, within the missing pages was almost certainly another notation indicating when the transfer from Newcastle to Biloela on Cockatoo Island occurred. Because Newcastle is not named either on the cover or within the register, records on the Child Welfare Index only identify admissions to the training school for girls at Biloela and Parramatta between August 1867 and December 1924. Any record downloaded from the Ancestry website identifies that the girl was a resident in Parramatta. In actuality, the first admissions between 1867 and 1871 were in Newcastle, located 160 kilometres north of either of these locations. Another limitation caused by the rebinding meant that from October 1869, or admission number 119, until the 6th of November 1876, or admission number 345, inmate names and all their details have not survived. I have compiled many other records and used my understanding of the suite of resources for the first 2 girls' industrial schools to successfully identify all except 2 of these girls, and in most cases I have found their families. The only location researchers can find the names and details for any omitted girls and any girls from the early reformatories is on my Wikidot website. The rebinding has also resulted in yet another limitation affecting a small number of girls. Because the remaining last page of the Newcastle admissions and the remaining first page of the Biloela admissions appear side by side and are tightly bound, they give the impression that the names recorded on the first page refer to the information recorded on the second page. These pages are not connected at all. A close inspection of the table frames shows a mismatch. The handwriting on each page differs, and when turning the page, the previously consecutive numbering of admissions jumps by over 100 places. The family details for Sarah Orban, alias Margaret White, Marianne Aliff, Sarah Maria and Pascaline DeMartine, Mary Jane and Annie Tucker, Marianne Price, Catherine Manton, Elizabeth Ann Thompson, Mary Ann Brown, Emma Luck, and Sarah Ann Keelan all admitted to Newcastle in September and October 1869 have not survived. The State Records Index has been corrected and does not identify any parents for these girls, but Ancestry has attributed and transcribed the details on the next page onto their names, and the CD, the Forgotten Children in Homes, Reformatories and Industrial Schools, New South Wales, has made the same error. Similarly, the names of the Biloela admissions from 334 to 344, whose family information is on the next page, have now been identified by me as Rose Scott, Eliza Jane Willis, Melinda Keogh, Mary, also known as Eliza Lane, Elizabeth Hannah Orheen, Mary Ann and Charlotte Tyson, Emma Blake, Jenny Davis, and Julia and Emily Anseline. The register is complete from the admission of Emmeline Featherstone. This register is an excellent resource if you have an ancestor admitted to either Newcastle, Biloela, or Parramatta Industrial Schools, but like all research, this information needs to be supported and verified by as many additional records as you can locate. In the next podcast, I will look at the Biloela discharge register that was commenced by Selina Walker in January 1876, and will explain how this register is supported by the discharge register. Further details about the sources used to identify and confirm admissions to Newcastle and Biloela appear on my Wikidot website under the Sources tab. I hope that I have added to your understandings of this special record.
Thank you, Jane. We hope that researchers who had ancestors in the industrial schools will benefit from Jane's work and will now have a better understanding of this register. The Industrial Schools Discharge Register will feature in the next podcast in this series, and more information on Jane's research may be found on www.nis.wikidot.com. Please join us again on Newcastle Family History Society podcast.